Good day, class. I want to take a few minutes to go over the results of your first exam, unit exam number 1. And so we're going to conduct this really quick review. Okay, so this last unit exam, our very first one, I want to go over real quickly some information about the test. The average score for the test was 92%, which is an A. The average test time, it took 42 minutes and 11 seconds on average for all of you. So for the most part, people got through the material relatively easily, it would seem. The item clarifications. There were 3 items that I wanted to clarify where 30% or more got these items wrong. They are statistical significance or probability, identifying sexual harassment, and FMLA rules. So we'll spend a few minutes on each of these slides to talk about them to hopefully clarify any misinformation you may have about them. First is probably the one that is probably the most important, and that deals with significance testing. Okay, so basically let's walk through the numbers again. We have some sort of question about something. We want to see if one variable has an influence, for example, on another variable. So when we design our experiments, we design it in such a way that we create a hypothesis testing, where we have an alternative hypothesis and a null hypothesis. What the null hypothesis is saying is that the result that we hope to find is not there at all. So the null hypothesis is a hypothesis which the researcher tries to disprove or to nullify. So that's basically saying that your belief about something X affecting something Y is not actually true at all. That's the null hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis is the one in which the researcher is trying to prove. But of course, we set up the experiments in such a way that it is just as likely that we'll prove the null hypothesis or the alternative hypothesis. We are not trying to fudge numbers in any particular direction. So in this particular example, we have here a biofertilizer company, and they have designed a new biofertilizer X. And they want to see how their biofertilizer does in comparison to other brands on the market, such as brand A, B, and C. All right, so we have our biofertilizer X and then brands A, B, C. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do an experiment here. We're going to use the same control and conditions for each, and we're going to fertilize them. Ours is going to be fertilized with brand biofertilizer X, and the other is going to be used as a fertilizer for A, brand B, and brand C, and so on. So once we've done the test, we have some sort of results. We have plants of differing sizes, and we're going to measure them to see if indeed biofertilizer X is different enough from brand A, B, C, and so on. That's what we're looking for. So then we talk about statistical significance. It is a statement of how likely it is an obtained result occurred by chance. So now that we have the results and we have numbers here, we want to utilize statistics in order to see how the numbers relate to the p-value. And the p-value is the probability of obtaining test results as least as extreme as the results actually observed under the assumption that the null hypothesis is correct. All right? So we can have our p-values set at a variety of things. For the most part, p-values these days are going to be set at 0.01. All right? Because we do it greater than 0.05. It's insufficient evidence against the null hypothesis. So we can't say the null hypothesis is incorrect in this particular sample. All right? So if it goes from 0.01 to 0.05, that means there is some significance. Okay, there's evidence against the null hypothesis, and it is statistically significant, meaning there is a real difference there. The ideal scenario is less than 0.01%. With a less than 0.01%, there is strong evidence against the null hypothesis, very statistically significant. So if we look at this 0.01, what does that actually mean? And what does all these point whatevers mean? All right, so a p-value of 0.01 means there is an excellent chance, a 99% chance, that the difference in outcomes between biofertilizer X and the other brands would not be observed if the intervention had no benefit. So what this is saying, that we are 99% confident that the results that we have obtained from our experiment, that biofertilizer X does make some sort of difference. Okay, so again, 99% that the difference in outcomes would not be observed if the intervention had no benefit whatsoever. So what we're saying here is that biofertilizer X does have a benefit. So that p-value is all about probability. The probability and how strong a case that we can make that indeed our intervention, the independent variable here, had some sort of legitimate influence or impact on the dependent variable, in this case, the size of the and health of the plant that was grown utilizing biofertilizer X. The other issue deals with harassment, or sexual harassment specifically. So let me give you these scenarios here and talk about them real briefly. Jerry asks his coworker Betty out on a date. Betty says, "No thanks." This is not harassment on Jerry's part. This is not improper either. If there isn't a policy forbidding colleagues dating, coworkers fraternizing and dating outside of work. Now, over the next 2 weeks, Jerry asks his coworker Betty out on a date again. She says emphatically, "No." Now, this is harassment, and it is not okay. Jerry has already gotten his answer earlier, but if he keeps asking and continually asks Betty to go out, this is what we talk about by way of harassment. So it should be noted, and it is expected, that people sometimes become interested in people they associate with, either it be at church, at some sort of club, socially, or even professionally. That is how people connect. Oftentimes people will meet their spouses at school or at work. Okay, so this is not unusual. But when it got to a point where Jerry, already having received his answer, that should have been it. That should have been the end of his quest. But if he continually asks Betty, even that second time he asks, Betty's going to feel quite uncomfortable. All right, not knowing what to do, or knowing what to do to hurt his feelings, or whatever the case may be. But he's putting Betty in a very awkward situation. So again, the notion here is that first ask, not harassment really. Okay, it may make Betty feel uncomfortable, but it's not really harassment. But when they keep doing the asking, even after he has been rebuffed, that does become an issue. And finally, the last item that was somewhat problematical on this exam was dealing with the Family Medical Leave Act. So I want to cover some key points about it and give you sort of like a certain perspective that hopefully helps you. So the FMLA employees, both male and female, okay, are going to have to a minimum of 12 weeks of unpaid leave each year to deal with the following family matters: births, adoptions, or placement for foster care; to care for a child, parent, or spouse with a serious health condition; for employee's own serious health condition that makes him or her unable to perform the job. So what we see here is this. While this is going on, the organization is doing some additional stuff for that particular employee. And what I mean by that is this. They've let them go, okay, based on the Leave Act here, but the organization will cover their health care and keep their job or an equivalent one open upon return. All right, that's a decent ask and a big ask that the FMLA has gotten from employers. Now, because of that, the employees have to do something too. They have to do something to the best of their ability if they can. And what that is this last bullet point. The employees must provide a doctor's certification and give 30 days notice if the leave is foreseeable by way of birth or an adoption. So if they knew they were going to have to go on X date for an adoption, and they never said anything. They knew this date for 6 months, okay, and then they tell them, I'm leaving at such and such time. The organization may feel a little bit weird simply because they need to put things into place, okay, where possible, so that the organization is not overly stressed out in this person's absence. So the idea here is simple. Employees provide a doctor certification and give 30 days notice if the leave is indeed foreseeable.